13. Most embarrassing moments Golden Age Hollywood could not hide. During Hollywood's golden age, powerful studio publicity departments worked tirelessly to maintain the perfect public images of their valuable stars. They could cover up minor indiscretions, buy the silence of witnesses, and even kill unflattering newspaper stories with a phone call. But sometimes, stars found themselves in situations so publicly embarrassing, so undeniably awkward, or caught on camera in such compromising moments that not even Hollywood's most skilled fixers could make them disappear. These weren't the dark scandals involving crime or tragedy, but the mortifying human moments where glamorous icons revealed themselves to be all too fallible, caught with their pants literally down, passing out at prestigious award ceremonies, suffering wardrobe malfunctions at major premieres, or making catastrophic verbal gaffes on live radio. What made these incidents particularly devastating wasn't their moral seriousness, but the sheer contrast between the perfectly polished public personas these stars had spent years cultivating and the humiliating reality that briefly broke through the facade. In an era before social media, these rare, unscripted moments gave audiences their only glimpse behind Hollywood's carefully constructed illusions. But here's what makes these embarrassing Hollywood moments truly fascinating. They weren't simply humiliating incidents, but often became pivotal turning points that transformed careers in surprising ways. While some stars never recovered from their public embarrassments, others cleverly incorporated these awkward moments into their personas, using self-deprecating humor to transform potential career killers into beloved aspects of their public image. Perhaps most surprisingly, several of these embarrassing incidents actually humanized previously distant stars, creating more authentic connections with audiences who found these glimpses of imperfection more relatable than the unattainable perfection studios typically presented. The real story behind these mortifying moments isn't just about temporary humiliation, but about how these unplanned glimpses of authentic humanity sometimes created more enduring star personas than all the carefully orchestrated publicity campaigns that studios spent millions crafting. And in a final twist that adds delicious irony to these narratives, the public embarrassments that studios fought hardest to suppress are often the anecdotes that kept these stars' legacies alive decades after their more respectable achievements have been forgotten. So what were the most mortifying public embarrassments that even Hollywood's powerful publicity machine couldn't contain, and how did these unscripted moments of humiliation transform both individual careers and audience perceptions of celebrity? Let's explore 13 Golden Age embarrassments so excruciatingly awkward they broke through Hollywood's wall of perfection and revealed the all-too-human stars behind the glamorous images. 1. Tallulah Bankhead, the Commando Catastrophe. Tallulah Bankhead's flamboyant personality and husky voice made her one of theater and film's most distinctive performers, but her habit of not wearing underwear created what may be Hollywood's most mortifying documented wardrobe malfunction. During filming of Alfred Hitchcock's Lifeboat, 1944, Bankhead's penchant for going commando combined with the film's cramped set to create a situation that embarrassed even the notoriously unflappable director. The incident occurred during scenes requiring Bankhead to climb a ladder in the lifeboat setting, providing the crew below with an unintended anatomical display that disrupted filming. After several days of this unintentional exposure, cinematographer Arthur Miller finally approached Hitchcock about the distracting situation. Hitchcock, in his dry manner, considered the problem and reportedly responded, "I don't know if this is a matter for the costume department, makeup, or hairdressing." What makes this embarrassment particularly significant is how it spread throughout Hollywood despite occurring before the social media age. The story was too delicious not to share, and soon the incident became widely known in industry circles. When asked about her lack of underwear by a reporter who'd heard the rumors, Bankhead provided the unforgettable response, "Darling, I've gone without underwear for years. It makes for a quick wash day, and besides, you never know when you'll need to seduce someone at a moment's notice." Rather than being mortified by the public exposure, both literal and figurative, Bankhead leaned into the embarrassment, incorporating it into her already outrageous public persona. She recognized that in an industry filled with carefully manufactured stars, her willingness to be authentically scandalous created a distinctive brand that ensured she would never be forgotten. The lifeboat incident exemplifies how some stars could transform potential embarrassment into career-enhancing notoriety through sheer force of personality. As film historian David Thompson noted, Bankhead understood something fundamental about celebrity that many of her contemporaries missed, that being memorable was ultimately more important than being respected. Her willingness to laugh at herself converted potential humiliation into enduring legend. 2. Bette Davis. The Oscar statue backside scandal. Bette Davis was renowned for her intensity and professionalism, making her impromptu modification of the Academy Award particularly shocking to Hollywood's establishment. After winning her first Oscar for Dangerous, 1935, Davis made a discovery that mortified the Academy and delighted gossip columnists for decades to come. Upon receiving her statuette, Davis noticed that the supposedly anatomically correct Oscar had a featureless, smooth backside. Feeling that this lacked verisimilitude, Davis used a nail file to carve buttocks onto her Academy Award, a modification she proudly showed to visitors and mentioned in interviews, much to the Academy's ongoing embarrassment. What makes this incident particularly significant is how it highlighted the gap between Hollywood's pretensions to artistic dignity and the irreverent attitudes of some of its biggest stars. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences had worked diligently to establish the Oscars as a prestigious, serious recognition of artistic merit. Davis's cheeky modification, quite literally, punctured this carefully constructed veneer of high-minded solemnity. Davis's friend and fellow actress Olivia de Havilland later revealed that the Academy was so mortified by Davis's modification that when she won her second Oscar for Jezebel, 1938, officials inspected the statuette before presenting it to her. According to de Havilland, they were absolutely terrified she would repeat the performance and establish a tradition of anatomically correct Oscars circulating through Hollywood. What's particularly fascinating about this embarrassing moment is how it reinforced rather than damaged Davis's brand as Hollywood's most fearlessly authentic star. While studios worked to maintain perfect public images for their contract players, Davis built her career on being genuinely herself, spiky, uncompromising, and willing to mock Hollywood's pretensions. The Oscar modification became part of her legend, demonstrating how even potentially embarrassing incidents could be transformed into career assets through the right personality and attitude. Film historian Janine Basinger observed that Davis understood the value of what we now call personal branding decades before the term existed. Her willingness to be difficult, opinionated, and occasionally outrageous distinguished her from more compliant stars and ultimately extended her career far beyond those of many more conventionally well-behaved contemporaries. 3. Joan Crawford. The drunk acceptance speech that wasn't hers. Joan Crawford's legendary professional discipline makes her proxy acceptance of an Academy Award among Hollywood's most mortifying moments. Unable to attend the 1946 Academy Awards, where she was nominated for Mildred Pierce, Crawford claimed illness, but arranged for director Michael Curtis to accept on her behalf should she win. When she did indeed win Best Actress, however, reporters discovered her receiving the news at home in bed, full makeup, hair perfectly styled, and wearing an elaborate negligee in what was obviously a staged photo opportunity. This carefully orchestrated, candid moment might have merely seemed calculated had Crawford not then decided to accept the award personally from Academy representatives who brought it to her home. Significantly intoxicated by this point, Crawford delivered a rambling, emotional acceptance speech to the small group in her bedroom, a speech captured by photographers and reported in excruciating detail by columnists Hedda Hopper and Luella Parsons. What makes this incident particularly embarrassing is how thoroughly it undermined Crawford's carefully constructed image of professional perfectionism. Throughout her career, Crawford had positioned herself as Hollywood's hardest worker, famous for her discipline and preparation. The spectacle of her drunkenly gushing over an award in her bedroom directly contradicted this persona, providing a glimpse of the insecurity and emotional vulnerability she typically kept hidden. Crawford's rival, Bette Davis, who'd also been nominated that year for The Corn is Green, never missed an opportunity to reference the incident in subsequent years. At a 1950s industry event where Crawford appeared intoxicated, Davis loudly remarked, "Someone get Joan a photographer and an Oscar before she falls down." The comment, reported in several Hollywood columns, demonstrates how thoroughly the embarrassing moment had become part of Crawford's public image. What's particularly fascinating about this incident is how it presaged the modern practice practice of using illness to avoid potentially embarrassing public appearances. As publicist Henry Rogers later revealed, after Jones' obvious staging of her illness, studios became much more careful about how they handled star absences from major events. She inadvertently created a new PR problem that publicists still deal with today: how to make an excuse seem genuinely believable rather than convenient. The bedroom acceptance became a cautionary tale in Hollywood about the dangers of trying to control your image too obviously. As film historian David Thompson noted, Crawford's greatest miscalculation was not understanding that obvious manipulation can be more damaging than the unflattering reality you're trying to hide. The public might have sympathized with her nervousness about attending the ceremony, but they couldn't forgive such transparent fakery. 4. Clark Gable, the king of Hollywood's dental disaster. Clark Gable's status as Hollywood's leading sex symbol makes his dental issues among the industry's most carefully guarded yet ultimately exposed secrets. When Gable arrived in Hollywood in the late 1920s, his terrible teeth, the result of neglect and a severe gum infection during his youth, posed a serious obstacle to his leading man potential. MGM invested in partial dentures for their promising new star, but the studio couldn't have anticipated how this cosmetic enhancement would lead to one of Hollywood's most persistent, embarrassing rumors. The incident occurred during a passionate kissing scene with co-star Constance Bennett in After Office Hours, 1935. According to multiple witnesses, Gable's partial dentures actually dislodged during the kiss and nearly ended up in Bennett's mouth. Bennett, a professional to her core, supposedly didn't break character, but discreetly held the dentures in her mouth until the scene ended, at which point she calmly handed them back to a mortified Gable. What makes this incident particularly significant is how aggressively MGM worked to suppress it. Studio fixers allegedly paid off crew members who witnessed the incident, while publicists planted stories about Gable's perfect natural teeth in fan magazines. These efforts might have succeeded had Carole Lombard, Gable's wife from 1939 to 1942, not had a notorious sense of humor about her husband's dental issues. At a major industry dinner, Lombard reportedly responded to a compliment about her husband's smile by announcing, "You should see them in a glass beside our bed." The comment, made in front of numerous gossip columnists, effectively confirmed years of rumors and left MGM's publicity department scrambling to minimize the damage to their leading man's viral image. What's particularly fascinating about this embarrassing moment is how it ultimately had minimal impact on Gable's career or appeal. After the initial embarrassment, and despite the widespread knowledge about his dentures, Gable remained Hollywood's quintessential masculine star for decades. This suggests that audiences were far more willing to overlook physical imperfections in their favorite stars than studios believed. What makes this incident particularly significant is how it spread beyond the immediate audience through technology that foreshadowed today's viral moments. An audience member captured the wardrobe malfunction with a personal camera, and though primitive by modern standards, the blurry image circulated widely in international tabloids. This represented one of the first instances of celebrity embarrassment being documented and distributed by regular people rather than professional photographers, presaging the democratization of celebrity coverage that would fully emerge decades later. Dietrich's handling of the moment revealed her consummate professionalism. According to multiple witnesses, she briefly covered herself, then straightened up and announced to the audience, "I have been in show business for 50 years, and this is the first time I have ever lost my dress. I hope you are not too disappointed to discover what has been there all along." She then continued her performance while stagehands brought her a robe. What's particularly fascinating about this embarrassing moment is how Dietrich incorporated it into subsequent performances. Rather than pretending it never happened, she began making self-deprecating references to the incident in her shows, at one point telling an audience, "Tonight, I promise to keep all my clothes in their proper places, unless you would prefer another souvenir photograph." This willing embrace of a potentially humiliating moment transformed it from a liability into part of her sophisticated, worldly persona. Columnist Dorothy Kilgallen observed that Dietrich demonstrated the difference between a star and a celebrity. A celebrity would have been destroyed by such an embarrassment. A star of Dietrich's magnitude simply absorbs it into her legend. This insight highlights how truly established stars could sometimes turn public embarrassments into assets through sheer sheer force of personality and willingness to laugh at themselves. 6. Red Skelton, the censored ad-lib that went live. Red Skelton's reputation as one of radio and early television's most beloved family-friendly comedians makes his 1949 on-air gaffe particularly shocking. During a live NBC radio broadcast of The Red Skelton Show, the comedian was performing a sketch involving his mean Whittle Kid character when he clearly flubbed a line. What followed left NBC executives horrified and forever changed broadcasting practices. Evidently believing that his microphone had been cut during the flub, Skelton clearly muttered, "That's no damn good. Let's try it again." The comment went out live to millions of listeners across America, creating one of radio's earliest documented instances of accidental profanity. The incident was particularly problematic given Skelton's specific appeal to family audiences and his show's 7:30 p.m. time slot when children were likely listening. What makes this incident particularly significant is how it transformed broadcasting practices. Within weeks, NBC implemented a mandatory 7-second delay on all live broadcasts, a practice soon adopted by all networks and still used in broadcasting today. Skelton's innocent mistake effectively ended the era of truly live broadcasting in American media, creating a buffer that continues to protect against similar incidents over 70 years later. The public reaction revealed the different standards of the era. NBC received over 40,000 letters of complaint, and several sponsors temporarily suspended their advertising. Skelton was forced to issue a formal apology on his next broadcast, reading a statement that expressed deep regret for language unbecoming a guest in your home. This extraordinarily contrite approach to what modern audiences would consider a minor profanity demonstrates how different expectations were during the Golden Age. What's particularly fascinating about this embarrassing moment is how it briefly damaged, but ultimately enhanced, Skelton's career. While the immediate reaction was negative, the incident humanized him to many listeners who found his obvious embarrassment relatable. His straightforward apology, taking full responsibility rather than blaming others, further endeared him to audiences who appreciated his honesty. Media historian Jim Cox noted that the Skelton incident represents a pivotal moment in broadcasting history, the point when networks realized that the benefits of liveness were outweighed by its risks. His 7 seconds of embarrassment created the 7-second delay that remains standard practice in broadcasting to this day. 7. Judy Garland, the Oscar night hospital bed. Judy Garland's complex relationship with Hollywood makes her 1954 Academy Awards incident particularly poignant. Expected to win Best Actress for A Star is Born, which would have represented a triumphant comeback after being fired by MGM, Garland was unable to attend the ceremony because she had just given birth to her son, Joey Luft. NBC arranged to broadcast from her hospital room if she won, with cameras and a crew stationed outside her door throughout the ceremony. What happened next created one of the most awkward moments in Oscar history. When Grace Kelly was unexpectedly announced as the winner for The Country Girl, the cameras were already live in the hospital hallway. Viewers witnessed the crew's rushed dismantling of equipment, while a network commentator awkwardly explained that they would not be going to Garland's room after all. The cameras lingered long enough to capture the hospital door opening briefly, and Garland's husband, Sid Luft, appearing, visibly upset, before realizing he was on camera and quickly closing the door. What makes this incident particularly embarrassing is how thoroughly it exposed the calculated nature of award show spontaneity. The premature setup at Garland's hospital room revealed that NBC had been told she would win, suggesting that Oscar results were known in advance, something the Academy had long denied. The incident created significant criticism of both NBC and the Academy for appearing to prize ratings moments over the integrity of the awards. For Garland personally, the public nature of her loss compounded what was already a devastating professional disappointment. Her close friend Lorna Smith later revealed that Judy was watching the broadcast from her hospital bed, surrounded by flowers and congratulatory telegrams from people certain she would win. Having the cameras outside her door turned her private disappointment into public humiliation. She later said it felt like being stood up at the altar in front of everyone she knew. What's particularly fascinating about this embarrassing moment is how it contributed to Garland's complex public image. While initially humiliating, the incident ultimately enhanced public sympathy for her as an artist who never received her due recognition from the industry. The image of Garland in her hospital bed, new baby in arms, being publicly denied Hollywood's ultimate validation became a powerful part of her narrative as the industry's most talented but mistreated star. Film historian William J. Mann observed that the hospital room incident perfectly encapsulates Garland's relationship with Hollywood, always promised the recognition she deserved, but somehow denied at the last moment. The very public nature of this particular disappointment transformed it from a simple award loss into an almost mythological moment in her story of industry mistreatment. 8. Errol Flynn, the courthouse pants splitting. Errol Flynn's swashbuckling image and notorious womanizing created the phrase, "in like Flynn," to describe romantic success. His 1942 trial for statutory assault represented a serious challenge to his career, but it was a courtroom wardrobe malfunction that created Hollywood's most mortifying legal moment. During a particularly tense day of testimony, Flynn rose quickly when the judge entered the courtroom, splitting the seat of his trousers with an audible rip. What made the situation particularly awkward was Flynn's well-known habit of going commando, a preference that was suddenly evident to the packed courtroom, including the all-female jury and numerous reporters. Flynn's attorney, Jerry Giesler, immediately threw his suit jacket around Flynn's waist, but not before several spectators and at least 2 jurors got an unintended view. The courtroom erupted in poorly suppressed laughter, creating a scene so chaotic that the judge temporarily cleared the room while Flynn changed into a bailiff's spare pants. What makes this incident particularly significant is how it transformed the tone of a serious legal proceeding. Flynn was facing charges that could have sent him to prison for years and destroyed his career. Yet the pants-splitting incident introduced an element of farce that made it difficult to maintain the gravity the situation deserved. Multiple jurors were seen laughing, and newspaper coverage of the trial took a decidedly more lighthearted tone after the incident. Flynn's biographer Jeffrey Myers suggested that the wardrobe malfunction may have actually helped his case. It's difficult to maintain a view of someone as a calculating predator when you've just seen them experience such a human moment of embarrassment. The incident punctured the formal atmosphere of the court and humanized Flynn in a way his legal team couldn't have planned better. Flynn was ultimately acquitted of all charges, leading to the cynical Hollywood observation that he had been in like Flynn and out like Flynn, a reference both to his reputation and his exposed state in the courtroom. While the acquittal resulted primarily from inconsistencies in the prosecution's case, some legal observers suggested that the pants-splitting incident might have inadvertently created sympathy among jury members. What's particularly fascinating about this embarrassing moment is how Flynn incorporated it into his own legend. Rather than being mortified, he later joked about the incident in his autobiography, My Wicked, Wicked Ways, writing that it was perhaps the only time in legal history where the accused exposed himself to the jury and improved his case. This willingness to laugh at himself reflected Flynn's larger-than-life persona and ability to transform potential embarrassments into enhancements of his roguish image. 9. Rita Hayworth, the champagne shower fiasco. Rita Hayworth's sophisticated image and extraordinary beauty made her champagne incident at the 1946 Cannes Film Festival particularly mortifying. Hayworth, promoting Gilda in her first major international appearance, found herself at the center of an unplanned champagne shower that transformed a glamorous photo opportunity into slapstick comedy. The incident occurred during a formal reception when a waiter carrying a tray of champagne tripped near Hayworth, sending several full glasses cascading over her white gown. The situation worsened when a helpful festival official attempted to blot the champagne with a napkin, inadvertently exposing more of Hayworth than intended when the wet fabric became transparent. Photographs captured Hayworth's progression from shocked to mortified as she realized the extent of her exposure. What makes this incident particularly significant is how it contrasted with Hayworth's carefully constructed public image. Columbia Pictures had spent years positioning her as the ultimate in sophisticated glamour, with studio head Harry Cohn personally supervising every aspect of her public appearances. The champagne shower reduced her to physical comedy in what was supposed to be her triumphant international debut as a serious star. The French press, less constrained than their American counterparts, published several revealing photos of the incident, creating what would now be called a viral moment. American newspapers were more restrained, but still reported on the unfortunate accident that left the star drenched and distressed. Columbia Pictures attempted damage control by having Hayworth's husband Orson Welles issue a statement criticizing the undignified and exploitative coverage, which only drew more attention to the incident. What's particularly fascinating about this embarrassing moment is how it highlighted the vulnerability of even the most glamorous stars to simple physical comedy. As film historian Janine Bassinger observed, the Hayworth champagne incident reminds us that classic Hollywood glamour was always a precarious construction, vulnerable to the same physical realities that affect everyone. No amount of careful image management could prevent a spilled drink from transforming a goddess into a soaking wet, embarrassed human being. The incident had an unexpected positive consequence for Hayworth's career. While initially mortifying, her good-natured handling of the situation, laughing it off after the initial shock, endeared her to the French press and public. Coverage of her subsequent festival appearances noted her refreshing lack of pretension and charming ability to laugh at herself, qualities that helped establish her as a favorite with European audiences for the remainder of her career. 10. Laurence Olivier, the method acting mishap. Laurence Olivier's reputation as one of theater and film's most distinguished actors makes his on-set incident with Marilyn Monroe during filming of The Prince and the Showgirl, 1957, particularly embarrassing. Olivier, directing as well as starring in the film, had become increasingly frustrated with Monroe's method acting techniques and frequent tardiness. His attempt to demonstrate how a scene should be played led to one of Hollywood's most mortifying directorial moments. The incident occurred during a scene where Monroe's character was supposed to flirtatiously wiggle while walking away from Olivier's character. Dissatisfied with Monroe's performance after multiple takes, Olivier announced to the entire crew that he would show her exactly how the movement should look. What followed was the distinguished Shakespearean actor attempting to mimic Monroe's famous walk, complete with exaggerated hip movements that made him look, in the words of one crew member, like a constipated giraffe trying to dance. The set reportedly fell completely silent as Olivier finished his demonstration, looking expectantly at Monroe for acknowledgement that she understood what he wanted. After a painfully long pause, Monroe supposedly responded, "If that's your idea of sexy, no wonder England lost its empire." The crew's suppressed laughter made it clear whose side they were on in the uncomfortable exchange. What makes this incident particularly significant is how it exposed the cultural clash between classical British acting traditions and the newer American method approach. Olivier, trained in the external technical tradition, believed acting was primarily about mastering physical technique. Monroe, trained by Lee Strasberg, approached performance from internal emotional states. Their mutual incomprehension created a perfect storm for embarrassment when Olivier attempted to physically demonstrate femininity to one of the world's most famous sex symbols. The story spread throughout Hollywood despite efforts to contain it, largely because Monroe herself found it amusing and shared it with friends. Olivier's dignity suffered considerably as the anecdote circulated, with fellow actors particularly enjoying the image of the great classical actor attempting to wiggle like Marilyn Monroe. What's particularly fascinating about this embarrassing moment is how it presaged larger shifts in acting methodology. As film historian David Thompson noted, Olivier's Monroe impression represents the last gasp of the old school attempting to assert dominance over the new. Within a decade, method approaches would become dominant in film acting, and the idea of a director physically demonstrating how to be sexy to an actor would seem not just embarrassing but absurdly outdated. Olivier himself later acknowledged the humiliation in his autobiography, writing that, "It was not my finest moment as a director or a man, and I deserved the ridicule that followed. Some lessons in hubris come at particularly high cost to one's dignity, and this was certainly mine." 11. John Wayne, the toupee that took flight. John Wayne's hypermasculine image as the quintessential American hero makes his hairpiece incident at a 1957 USO show particularly mortifying. Wayne, like many male stars of the era, wore a toupee to maintain his virile appearance on screen, but went to extraordinary lengths to keep this fact from public knowledge. His studio contracts specifically prohibited photographers from shooting him from behind or above, angles that might reveal the truth about his hair. The incident occurred during a windy outdoor performance for troops stationed in Korea. As Wayne stood at the microphone delivering a patriotic speech, a strong gust of wind caught his hairpiece and lifted it completely off his head. The toupee traveled several feet before a quick-thinking aide retrieved it, but not before thousands of servicemen and several photographers witnessed the Duke's bare scalp. What makes this incident particularly significant is the extraordinary efforts undertaken to prevent the photographs from becoming public. According to multiple accounts, military police immediately confiscated cameras from press photographers present, while Wayne's staff collected names of all journalists who had witnessed the incident. The Pentagon, eager to maintain good relations with Hollywood during the Cold War, supposedly classified the photographs as sensitive to national security, an extraordinary measure for what was essentially a cosmetic embarrassment. Despite these efforts, descriptions of the incident circulated widely within the entertainment industry. Comedian Bob Hope, who was also performing at the event, reportedly incorporated oblique references to the incident in subsequent USO shows, asking audiences if the weather was toupee flying bad today, a joke that military audiences who had witnessed the original incident particularly appreciated. What's particularly fascinating about this embarrassing moment is how it demonstrates the different privacy standards of the era. While modern celebrities generally acknowledge cosmetic enhancements when they become obvious, Golden Age stars maintained strict public fiction about their appearance, treating revelations about toupees or plastic surgery as career-threatening rather than merely embarrassing. Wayne's friend and frequent director John Ford later claimed that the incident led to a significant improvement in toupee technology. According to Ford, after the Korea incident, John invested in developing a hairpiece that could withstand a hurricane. He said if he was going to wear the thing, it should at least be able to stay on his head without requiring glue. Whether this technological innovation actually occurred is uncertain, but no subsequent public hairpiece incidents were reported during Wayne's career. Film historian Scott Amon observed that Wayne's toupee incident represents the extraordinary vulnerability of hypermasculine star images to minor physical realities. The revelation that the ultimate American tough guy wore a hairpiece threatened the entire carefully constructed persona on which his career was built. It's a testament to Wayne's overall appeal that such a potentially deflating incident had minimal impact on his status with audiences. 12. Joan Fontaine, the Oscar presentation heart attack. Joan Fontaine's sophisticated image and legendary rivalry with sister Olivia de Havilland make her 1954 Academy Awards incident particularly excruciating. Selected to present the Best Actor award, Fontaine's extreme anxiety about potentially announcing her brother-in-law, Marcus Goodrich, then married to de Havilland, as the winner for The Caine Mutiny, created one of Oscar's most awkward moments. As Fontaine opened the envelope and began to read the winner's name, which was actually Marlon Brando for On the Waterfront, she suddenly clutched her chest and gasped, "Oh my God, I'm having a heart attack," before collapsing into the arms of co-presenter Audrey Hepburn. The broadcast cut to commercial while medical personnel rushed to the stage, creating nearly 3 minutes of dead air during the live ceremony. Doctors quickly determined that Fontaine had experienced a panic attack rather than a cardiac event. When the broadcast resumed, a visibly shaken Hepburn announced Brando's win alone, explaining that Miss Fontaine felt faint from the heat of the lights and is resting comfortably backstage. This obvious fiction fooled no one, particularly when photographs of Fontaine being carried from the stage appeared in next morning's newspapers. What makes this incident particularly significant is how it exposed the genuine emotion behind Hollywood's carefully maintained veneer of professional courtesy. The Fontaine de Havilland feud was well known in industry circles, but rarely acknowledged publicly. Fontaine's panic attack at the mere possibility of having to acknowledge her sister's husband's achievement revealed the true depth of their estrangement in a way that couldn't be disguised by publicity departments. The incident became a staple of Hollywood gossip, with numerous variations emerging over the years. De Havilland reportedly commented that her sister always did have a flair for drama at inappropriate moments, while Fontaine later claimed she had actually experienced an allergic reaction to seafood at the pre-ceremony dinner. Neither explanation adequately addressed the extraordinary coincidence of her attack occurring precisely as she was about to read the winner's name. What's particularly fascinating about this embarrassing moment is how it humanized both actresses for the public. Their carefully maintained, dignified images had created a certain distance from audiences. The Oscar incident, with its raw emotion and obvious personal drama, made them seem more relatable and human. As columnist Hedda Hopper observed at the time, nothing creates public fascination like genuine emotion breaking through Hollywood's perfect facades. The incident would be referenced decades later when Fontaine and de Havilland found themselves seated in adjacent rows at the 50th Academy Awards in 1978. Photographers captured both sisters studiously obviously ignoring each other throughout the ceremony, with Fontaine reportedly whispering to her seatmate, "I made it through without a heart attack this time. I consider that progress." 13. Ronald Reagan. The chimpanzee urine incident. Ronald Reagan's later political career makes his onset incident with a chimpanzee co-star particularly ironic. Years before becoming California governor and ultimately U.S. president, Reagan co-starred with Bonzo the chimpanzee in the 1951 comedy Bedtime for Bonzo. The film itself became a source of political jokes during his later career, but a specific unscripted moment during filming created Reagan's most mortifying Hollywood memory. During a scene requiring Reagan to hold Bonzo while delivering dialogue, the chimpanzee apparently became nervous under the hot lights. Without warning, Bonzo urinated copiously, soaking Reagan's carefully tailored suit and causing him to exclaim an unscripted profanity that guaranteed the footage was unusable. The incident would have remained a minor production anecdote except for what happened next. Director Frederick de Cordova, rather than calling cut immediately, allowed cameras to continue rolling as Reagan attempted to maintain his dignity while dripping with chimpanzee urine. The resulting footage became a staple of Universal Studios blooper reels shown at rap parties and industry events. Reagan, attempting to salvage the moment with humor, can be heard saying, "That's the last time I work with an actor who drinks so much water." What makes this incident particularly significant is how it followed Reagan throughout his career transition from actor to politician. During his 1966 California gubernatorial campaign, political opponent Pat Brown supposedly arranged for the blooper reel to be shown at a Democratic fundraiser, creating significant embarrassment for Reagan with potential voters. When Reagan complained about this tactic, Brown allegedly responded, "Politics is a lot like working with chimps. You should be prepared for occasional golden showers." The incident resurfaced again during Reagan's presidential campaigns, with political cartoonists frequently depicting him alongside a chimpanzee. When asked about the persistent references during a 1980 press conference, Reagan demonstrated his evolved political skill by responding, "I learned an important lesson working with that chimp. Sometimes the most dignified response to an undignified situation is simply to change your clothes and get back to work." What's particularly fascinating about this embarrassing moment is how Reagan ultimately incorporated it into his political persona. Rather than remaining perpetually mortified by the incident, he developed a repertoire of self-deprecating jokes about it. This ability to laugh at himself became a significant political asset, helping transform his image from mere actor to relatable political figure. Film historian Mark Vieira observed that Reagan's chimp urine incident represents the ultimate example of how a potentially career-damaging embarrassment can be neutralized through humor and perspective. By acknowledging and laughing at the incident himself, he removed its power to humiliate him. It's a strategy that served him well throughout his political career when opponents attempted to use his acting background against him. Now here's what most people don't understand about these Hollywood embarrassments. They weren't just isolated, humiliating moments, but often became defining aspects of these stars' public personas and legacies. While studio publicity departments fought desperately to suppress these incidents, many of these embarrassing moments actually created more authentic connections with audiences than all the carefully crafted publicity campaigns that cost millions. What these mortifying incidents revealed was a fundamental truth about celebrity culture. Perfectly polished public images might create admiration, but moments of genuine human vulnerability, even embarrassing ones, created something more valuable: relatability and connection. Even more surprisingly, the stars who recovered most successfully from public embarrassment weren't those who denied or hid from these moments, but those who embraced them with humor and self-awareness. From Tallulah Bankhead's unapologetic acknowledgement of her commando tendencies to Ronald Reagan's willingness to joke about being urinated on by a chimpanzee, the ability to laugh at oneself proved far more effective damage control than all the denials and suppression efforts that studios typically employed. This insight, that humanizing imperfection could be more valuable than manufactured perfection, took decades to fully penetrate Hollywood's approach to celebrity. Yet these golden age embarrassments offered early evidence that audiences often found fumbling, fallible stars more appealing than the flawless ideals the studio system worked so hard to present. This understanding would eventually transform celebrity culture, creating a world where carefully staged, authentic moments would become as meticulously planned as the perfect images they replaced. We began by asking what mortifying public embarrassments even Hollywood's powerful publicity machine couldn't contain, and how these unscripted moments transformed both individual careers and audience perceptions of celebrity. What we've discovered is a collection of wonderfully human moments where Golden Age icons revealed themselves to be just as fallible, awkward, and imperfect as the rest of us. From Tallulah Bankhead's commando catastrophe to Ronald Reagan's chimpanzee soaking, these incidents pierced the carefully constructed veneer of Hollywood perfection, creating unplanned glimpses of the actual people behind the glamorous facades. While some stars never recovered from their public humiliations, others discovered that audiences often found these humanizing moments more endearing than off-putting. What makes these stories particularly significant is how they challenge our understanding of Golden Age Hollywood's approach to celebrity. The studio system operated on the assumption that stars needed to appear flawless and superhuman to maintain their appeal. Yet these embarrassing incidents suggest that genuine humanizing moments, even mortifying ones, sometimes created stronger audience connections than all the carefully orchestrated publicity campaigns that studios invested in so heavily. Perhaps the most valuable insight these embarrassing moments offer is the importance of how stars responded to their public humiliations. Those who denied, hid, or seemed excessively mortified often suffered long-term career damage. In contrast, figures like Bette Davis, Marlene Dietrich, and John Wayne, who acknowledged their embarrassments with humor and self-awareness, often found these incidents actually enhanced their public appeal by making them more relatable. As we reflect on these mortifying Golden Age moments, we're reminded that celebrity culture has always involved tension between manufactured perfection and authentic humanity. These unscripted embarrassments, the wardrobe malfunctions, verbal gaffes, and physical mishaps that no publicity department could control, provided rare glimpses behind Hollywood's carefully constructed illusions, connecting audiences with the imperfect humans behind the perfect star images. If you enjoyed this exploration of Hollywood's most embarrassing moments, please hit the like button and subscribe for more content examining the fascinating and sometimes awkward truth behind classic cinema. Leave a comment sharing which of these embarrassing incidents most surprised you, or suggesting other aspects of Golden Age Hollywood you'd like us to explore. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in our next journey beyond the glittering facade of Hollywood's Golden Age.